So, audit. This is separate to a sensory audit, by the way. So this is actually an audit of curriculum and assessment. So have we all heard of the platform Keys? The Keys, which is like a school leaders platform, yeah. And they have on there a wonderful document which is essentially for whole school SEND, and looking at how you would do an audit of your SEND provision from the whole school. I took that and chopped it up a little bit, and tried to create one for PE and auditing of a PE SEND, and the provision that you're able to provide. I'll try and hopefully get it on screen. Is that on people's screens or not? Just say PE SEND audit. No, that's fine. I'll go a different way. Let's get it instead. You move out the way. You go there. That one there. Share. But now. Yay. Yeah, so it's 8-page document. One of the pages is that, so you don't have to tick anything like that. The last page is a ticky box, and then you rate yourself. So again, it's essentially a 6-page document, and it explores teaching and learning. It explores your how you meet individual needs. It explores curriculum and assessment. So the idea is that you would do essentially an audit of your offer, your PE offer and your PE curriculum, and then you would say whether you are embedded, it's in progress, or it's not yet started. So for curriculum assessment there, the first one says, well, you can't see it, the curriculum is embedded in and reflective of inclusive practice for your context. Essentially, is everyone able to engage for the kids that you've got? Is it embedded? Is it in progress? Is it not started? And then what are you going to do to get to where you need to be? What are you going to do with your curriculum? And then you tick it off when you got there. On the last page, you put where you are, and you figure out where you need to be. I'll share that out to everyone, so you can have a copy of that. But it essentially looks at the whole range of issues that the research has thrown up about the individual, the staff, and the facilities, which are the 3 key main bits. We do regularly to understand child's needs. Sorry, Sam, I just saw your message there. We do regularly to understand child's needs. Doesn't.
It was when you asked the question about whether we meet as a cohort to discuss SEN.
Oh, sorry.
We meet once a week. Sorry, I'm going to have to unmute again.
No, that's fine. Sorry. Thank you, pal. I appreciate the effort you go into. It really is outstanding. So, like their meeting individual needs, the department has carried out a skills audit to ascertain the knowledge and skills of all staff, which can be used in continued professional development. You might have someone already on your team that is a secret boffin when it comes to SEND, but you haven't asked them, so you don't know. And sometimes you just need to ask the question and you go, oh, I didn't know you knew that. Oh, okay. Do you fancy doing a bit of work on that? Oh yeah, cool. That's brilliant. And it's just starting those conversations really. And it's meant to be a non-threatening thing that just allows you to really start to explore what you're offering, and then path your way, sort of figure out your path forward. We work a lot of sort of coaching models at our school, where you don't necessarily get given the answer. You've got to try and work your way through it. Sort of using grow models and things like that. And essentially this is designed, hopefully, to allow you to sort of follow a growth pathway to eventually get to a point where you go, yeah, we've got a really good provision now, and we're really inclusive of our department for SEND. I'll try and get back onto the PowerPoint. Hopefully it doesn't break. Ta-da. Lindsay, I wondered if SEND schools run training to mainstream schools. So obviously Lindsay, she's actually a head gymnastics coach at a club where I coach, trampolining. And I think there is some work done between some SEN schools in terms of running training to mainstream schools, but it's trying to find time to release certain staff and actually finding schools that are accepting of it in a non-threatening way. I think sometimes, Joe touched upon it, that people can be quite fixed and sort of feel they know what they're doing anyway, so that why they need someone else telling them what to do. But it is certainly something that I think more schools need to do more of. I know our school, more of our staff need to go into mainstream to actually look how easy they've got it at times, and to understand that actually it's we've got smaller amounts of kids, but mainstream we've got just as many kids, but they've got the kids that we've got as well. So they've got their own challenges there as well. And how did you find that? 2 seconds. Brianne, how did you find the training that you provided to other schools?
It was good. It meant that we ended up having a bit of an influx of children with additional needs, because we ended up becoming known as being good at teaching them. But I think that's because we had that specialist training. I think, so my school was in Cheetham Hill, which is a really deprived area of Manchester. So the needs suddenly, I think a bit like Joe was saying, the needs suddenly increased out of nowhere, and we kind of just became a little bit like, oh, we don't really know what we're doing here. So we asked for them to come in. I think they worked with us over a term on and off, just to kind of help us get our heads above water. And then actually having that specialist involvement really meant that we then almost became specialists as well, because we'd had that sort of one-to-one guidance.
It's like that shared practice, isn't it? And
yeah,
not being afraid to actually go, we need a bit of help, because you don't quite know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And I think some people think that it costs them an arm and a leg as well. Whereas actually, I think a lot of SEN schools, if they knew that schools are going to be open and actually listen to the support they're going to give, would actually just give that time. That's like me tonight. I just wanted to put out there, who wants to do some SEN training, because I know that even if it affects one person and their practice, it's going to affect numerous kids, and that for me is all I want, to make the kids' experiences.
Yeah. I don't think we paid for ours.
No, and they get a lot from it as well. School.
Yeah.
Opening the doors is always good for any school, really. Rachel, go on, fire away.
I've just put that I've obviously done quite a bit of training in the past, but it's been more child specific. So we'd maybe look at the building blocks that are missing maybe for an individual, and then offer some specific support to the PE teacher to kind of guide how things can move forward. And I know when speaking with people previously, we may be discussing one child, but actually there's 5 or 6 in that class that you can relate to when you're talking about things, and it all sort of has a knock-on effect really with how we can kind of share practice and move things forward. And I know physios who would do similar, and speech and language therapists from a communication perspective, as well, thinking outside the box of being a qualified teacher. I suppose there's still a lot of knowledge out there that can help and support.
Yeah, and I know that like Rachel's relatively new to our school. She came this year, and one of the first things that I sort of said was, how can you help me do my job better, essentially. And it was all about trying to work more collaboratively with each other to try and get the best outcome for the kids. And that really helped us both understand what we were trying to achieve in terms of our own individual roles, but how we could complement each other as well in terms of our shared objectives, really. So I know that I found that a really useful process. I can imagine Rachel would hopefully agree.
Great.
So I'll send a copy of that out to everyone that wants it. I said, just so you can potentially look at it, you can adapt it, do whatever you want with it, and just sort of have a look and see if you feel that it's something that might benefit your setting, really. Right, so onto my curriculum then. So again, those of you familiar with YST and the work that they've done might be familiar with this sort of model. I kind of stole it and then made it look a bit different, because that's what you do, you magpie things, and you make it work for where you are. So obviously in September, the new RSE curriculum is meant to coming out along with the healthy education curriculum, and there's a great deal of that again gets shoved and chucked into PE, just because I feel that they need to put it somewhere. So when I was designing what I wanted to do, obviously I still have to have the physical activity, physical competence within there. I felt that healthy lifestyles and behaviours were really important for our students, but then also there was this big section about the social, emotional, and sort of metacognition. Metacognition, all those buzzwords that's flying around education at the minute, isn't it? People are, oh, metacognition, yeah. But I felt I had to put it in there, so I did. It's just about making decisions, really, and trying to sort of apply them to yourself. So that's what I wanted my curriculum to be formed upon and to be based around. And I like to work backwards. So I like to figure out where I want the kids to get to. And like for me, it's really quite straightforward. I can imagine for Sam as well, being in sort of SEN settings and working with sort of SEMH and that sort of thing, is that most of the students are going to be following and not necessarily tracking to the same endpoint anyway. But that was that's my assessment format. I have a very small amount on performance and fitness, and it's very basic things. So the top end is persist to overcome challenge. Because for again, I'll send it out so people can see it in a much better format and much bigger. My healthy lifestyles and balance and behaviours, obviously focusing around physical health and fitness, mental well-being, and healthy eating. And then the social, emotional, metacognition forms a big chunk, pretty much the same amount as the rest of my learning. And it's all about coaching, decision-making, mindset, character, and leadership. Now, the key point for me is that any student can make progress on any of these strands at any rate. Just to clarify a bit more, they could be fantastically fit and be at the top end, persist to overcome challenge in terms of fitness, might be right up there. Their leadership might be right down at the bottom, is happy being led by others. That's fine, because that is a profile of students up and down the country that we know. I know that previous models you might come across, let's see if I can share it again and get it on. Because some schools use, come on, no, not aware there we go. Show windows, no, where is it? There we go. Some schools love this model, and if you haven't seen a PE department using this framework, then I don't know where you've been living. I think every PE department, there we go, every PE department upon some point or another has used this wonderful framework, and then they've changed the colours on it to make it look like their school, and they've said, oh yeah, well, we do it differently to that because we said that week 1 wasn't introduced into running style, week 1 was long jump, and they mix it up and they go, yeah, that was really good, that wasn't it, and we spent a lot of time doing that. And there's no application to put in SEND in there. There's no differentiation. There's no thinking about the kids you've got in front of you. You just chuck it in because you feel that it ticks a box in terms of evidence. Correct me if I'm wrong and sound really cynical, but I think that's probably quite true for a lot of PE departments, unfortunately. Oh, have we lost Bryony? Oh, Brian, sorry. I think we might have. Yeah. So that's not good enough, really, is it? We know that's not good enough, and we know it's a bit naff, and it lacks effort, and it doesn't really sort of display the best light in terms of what we're able to actually provide. Other PE departments, or I originally had something that looked like this. And it was a bit similar. Not as many areas to look at. It was only a decision making, sort of touch and go, really. Coaching, performance, mindset, character. So that was a bit different. The rest of it then sort of remained the same, really. And again, it didn't really fit the bill because it didn't really sort of tick the boxes for my students. So eventually, after much chopping and changing, I think at the minute, yeah, definitely at the minute, I'm settled on a style that looks like this. And it ticks the boxes for my students, it ticks the boxes for what I'm facing and what I'm trying to achieve, essentially. So I've got the key areas of focus on there. My key point at the top, typical primary student would expect to be working towards mastery of these LOs. However, if a student is more able, they're encouraged to access higher stages of learning. That's my little bit for Ofsted that says I do push higher kids on, and I'm not just stuck with this bit, because we've always got to have one eye on what Ofsted are wanting. And then we look at sort of literacy, numeracy and PE, cross-curricular, oracy and cultural capital, which is obviously another big one that's coming along at the minute, and people are wanting more and more cultural capital. And it was because of cultural capital that I decided to travel around the world with my sports and explore this. So that is my curriculum for Key Stage 2 and 3. We've only got up at Key Stage 2. In Key Stage 4, we move on to the sports science. But you see different countries, different sports. We don't repeat anything. We really go crazy with what we do. We had kinball. Has anyone heard of kinball before? That's crazy and Canadian. And it's like a ball. It's like as big as my clock, if not bigger. And you essentially have to try and get it to hit the floor, and one team has to try and keep it up, and that is it. That is the game in a nutshell. It is crazy, but it's mega fun. And like I said, we're meant to be doing Aboriginal sports and Maori sports, trick ball, dodge disc. Dodge disc is great. If you use some sort of soft touch frisbees, essentially, and you just get to lob them at each other. But then you can get loads of different versions of the game, and you get them to consider how they would move around the spaces, how they would set up their own particular way of doing the sport, their own rules. You can really make it your own thing. Some sports don't allow themselves to sort of be covered for a whole term. So like Molki, I don't know if everyone's come across Molki before. Essentially like little skittles, and you've got to try and knock them over. And handball, sort of chuck them together because they fit quite nicely, both sort of throwing and target based. And Malakamba, my kids love that. Essentially, it's gymnastics with a bit of yoga chucked in, and it's a really good sport actually. Yeah, and we've got air tracks. I don't know if anyone else got access to air tracks. If you've got the budget, get one. The mega. But it allows them to just do crazy things on there as well. But yeah, so that was where we were at. We sort of went, well, actually, our students have a real aversion to doing your typical sports within PE because I've had such traumatic experiences of them in the past. So let's just bin all that and do something completely different. So no one can be the best in the class because they've never done it before. Yes, people are going to be naturally more able to pick things up quicker, but we're all going to be learning at some point or another. So it creates that real level playing field for our students that I feel that their access and they're able to get on board with really well. And that works really nicely. So yeah, chuck in random sports that people aren't going to be good at because it's amazing how much the dynamics in the class can shift. As soon as the people who are always the best are no longer the best because they've never played the sport before. It's a really good one. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Where's it gone? Fabulous. Yeah. So that's where I was, and I just chucked in the learning outcomes. You know, I'm not really bothered about the order I do things. I'm not fixed by doing in terms of, if I see an opportunity, I'm going to come on to this in a minute anyway. But if I see an opportunity to look at skills that particular week and really hammer skills, then I will. But other weeks, skills won't be anywhere near my radar, because actually they really need to just focus on the rules, because they're not quite getting it. And you just sort of you work your way around it in quite a fluid manner, really.